Hello, and welcome to Digital Publishing Online, and I'm Lisa Gabrielle. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to set up our postcard designs in InDesign. Okay, so let me go ahead and enlarge this a little bit. So I had the templates up in the last video, and I went over these templates with you, and I talked about some specific criteria that's associated with setting up your postcard. Well, now we're actually going to use these templates to set up our InDesign document. So as I mentioned here, the trim size of our template is basically what is stated here in the middle. The postcard size for this is 4.25 by 6, and that is the trim size of this postcard. So knowing that information, we're going to come over here into InDesign and we're going to actually set up our documents for a 4.25 by 6-inch postcard. So as you can kind of see here, I have that already kind of going on. The other thing I want to mention here before we actually set up a brand new one is that it's very important that you set up your postcard front and back in one document. As you can kind of see here, I've got my pages panel flown out here, and I have two pages. One page is my front, and the second page is my back design. Okay, so it's very important that you follow the setup for InDesign when setting up your postcard designs. Okay, so basically how that's done is you go up to File, Document, and if you've already experimented with this, you can still go in and modify your document to meet some of the size criteria that I've posted here in the templates. But what you're going to do is you're going to change this to the landscape format here in the new document window. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you're going to do is make sure and turn off this facing pages option. We are not using facing pages for this project, so make sure this is turned off. And over here, you're going to put width 6. Oops, I'm sorry. Width should be 4.25 by 6. Oops. Okay, there we go. All right, I thought that was right the first time. For some reason, it must have kicked back to the other one. Okay. Well, regardless, you want to put 6 in for the width because that is the width, and 4.25 in for the height. And make sure this is set to landscape. Okay. Typically, the standard margin size for a postcard should start at about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2.5 in here and let that apply itself all the way around the postcard. If you I thought maybe it would show me automatically out here, but I guess not. They have kind of like a bug in their preview, I've noticed, because that actually should display right now out here, that change. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our bleed, and as I said before in previous videos, the industry standard bleed size is going to be 1.25 for 1/8 of an inch all the way around. There you go. Yeah, see, it doesn't seem to want to apply that. Interesting. Okay, so I've got the bleed set up. I've got my typical margin. I'm going to leave my columns alone. And I've got my trim size in here, 4.25 by 6. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And I'm noticing that it has not changed the margins, which is interesting. There seems to be some kind of a bug. So I'm going to change the margins myself by going up to the layout, and I'm going to pull down to margins and columns, and I'm going to actually change the margins here. There we go. And if we hit this little lock, it'll apply a 1/4 inch margin all the way around. Now, why that didn't work in the setup, I'm not absolutely sure. It seems to be a bug. I've noticed that in other documents I've created. Okay, so now you've got your postcard document set up. It's got a 1/4 inch margin and an 1/8 inch bleed. For the front and back, you're going to go ahead and grab a master page and drag it down so that you have both the front and back design for your postcard. Okay, it's pretty simple. Now I'm going to show you a couple examples of some ones that have been done. I've got one here. This is one that's been done by a student, and you can kind of see all of the things I just showed you, and the InDesign setup there is applied here. We've got, let's see, if I go to File, Document Setup, I've got a 4¼ by 6" postcard set up to landscape, and I've got an 1/8 of an inch bleed all the way around. So that information is here in the document setup. In addition, what he does not have here is he has color on the front, but he does not have his art set up on the back for black and white. So I would probably come in here and edit this art, modifying the colors to black. And this art here would be set to black. There you go. And then all the text content is set to black as well. So, oh, by the way, I believe in your project handout, there is a statement in the handout that you need to add this little clause here to both of the pieces that you're working on for this project, and it needs to read, "This design work was created for fulfillment for an assignment for course credit at," and it says Eastern New Mexico University here, but yours will say Northlake College in Irving, Texas. Okay, so you need to have this statement that you did this in a college course, just to protect yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change this art to black and white. And now again, the art that's on this side of the postcard, as I mentioned in the last video, needs to be tinted back to 15%. So you select the actual text or art or whatever, you colorize it black, and then you slide the slider here to 15%, as you can kind of see. So because this art is appearing on the post office side of this postcard, I have to tint it back to 15%. So let me go ahead and turn off my frame edges and hide my guides. And you can kind of see, actually, we'll turn our guides back on. We could put it into the preview mode, and it'll cut the bleed off, and we can kind of get an idea of what our postcard looks like. It looks like I forgot to apply black to this as well. There you go. All right, so now I've got this postcard designed according to the specs, which is a color front and a black and white back. Okay. All right. The other thing I'd like to mention about postcard design in terms of the front of the postcard is one of the things about postcards is they're everywhere, and there's millions of them. And so when you design a postcard, you're in competition with all those other postcards out there, which makes it tough for a little postcard to actually, penetrate all of that competition and force someone to actually read it. So you want to think about the front of this postcard as being sort of catchy and to be something that is going to catch someone's eye and force them to want to turn it over and read more. Okay, like, in this case, more could be and should be. And if I was going to talk to the student about this project, I would say you probably need to have more information on the back about how to get a hold of somebody about this topic or how to outreach on this particular subject. But I really do like the front of his postcard. He's got this really clear, catchy headline that says, guns don't kill people, dirty water does. And it has this image of a gun with a water droplet coming out of it. So I think it's a kind of a nice way to kind of draw somebody in. A great headline and a really interesting piece of artwork. forces the viewer to flip the card around and find out more. In this case, there's nothing more. So what I would suggest to this student is to actually add, um, maybe an organization locally that they can contact, a website, a 1-800 number, or something of that nature to give them further information about the topic. So think about that as you're designing your postcards, that the front design is pretty catchy. Like, here's a pretty conceptual one where it's just an image. um, it doesn't have a headline, it doesn't have anything really explaining what this is about. And for that reason, because there's nothing there other than an interesting image, people will tend to turn it over just to see what's on the back or what it's all about. So one good way. Again, here's an example of somebody just using a type dominant front of a postcard with an interesting headline that catches their eye, forces people to turn it around. Again, I showed you this example just a moment or so ago. This is beautiful photography, which is always captivating and always, draws people in. As you can kind of see, it's talking about a particular area, and for that reason, somebody might be interested to turn around the card to see more. Um, Interesting vector art. This is an example of interesting vector art. This is all created with, just shapes in InDesign or Illustrator. Forces us to turn the card around to find out what it's all about. So as you're thinking about your designs and as you're putting this postcard together, keep that in mind. You want your fronts to be eye-catching because you're competing with so many other postcards out there. Um, what was the other thing I was going to say? It just kind of was in my mind and then it escaped me. And that's not a good thing when you're on video, when you're being recorded. um, let's see. Go ahead and make this smaller. Oh, that's what I was going to do. The other thing that you want to keep in mind when putting this campaign together is, as I mentioned, a lot of times what students do is they have a series of images that they used on the brochure design, and they just take one of those images and they plaster it on the front of the postcard and they go, whoop, I'm done. Well, that's not recommended. And the rule of not using images twice was created because of that reason. I would like to see that whatever you use on the postcard is an original image that you haven't already used in the brochure, but yet makes a connection and there's continuity, visual continuity across the series of the two, the design on the postcard and the brochure, that looks like they go together. So that's very important. I want to show you this whole campaign so that you can kind of see the continuity that was applied by this student. So you've seen the postcard here. It's a nice job here. Here is the brochure design that goes with it. So his brochure was um, a gatefold. So this kind of folds around, and I don't have this on me to show you, but it folds around like this. But here, let me go ahead and turn off the guides here. You can kind of see the nice typography that was used on this particular project. Now, I just want to interject 1 minute and just remind you about all the things that you learned on the first project in this class. We went through um, 7 painstaking weeks of working with typography only, and I hope through that through the course of 7 weeks that you learned all of the different things that are available to you to make type design look great. And I'm expecting to see you apply some of those techniques in this brochure, this campaign, in the brochure design and in the postcard. And you can kind of see how this particular student has done that. I mean, he's using scale of text to show hierarchy of information. He's using weight of text to show the difference between the word life and death, to give emphasis to that word life. So it's very important. Again, bulleted information is common in brochure design. You had a section where you used rules and bullets. Again, here's rules coming up here in your brochure. A lot of this particular brochure is an infographic. Infographics are a popular way to put content into a brochure because people really don't like to read a lot in brochures. They like to look at pictures, they like to look at infographics, they like the information to be sort of figured out for them. All they have to do is just look at a couple panels and the point is made. So it's very important that you're clear and you don't have too much text to read in these brochures because no one's going to read it. I will tell you that much. That's not the idea of designing a brochure campaign. The idea is to take the information and make it as simple for your viewers as possible as a designer. So again, going back to your first project, the Type Phases book, looking at all of the different phases you went through and how all those phases can help you really make this brochure design look great. And I know you can do it because I've seen students start out without doing the type phases project and do these brochure designs and have zero idea on what to do with any of the text. And it just looks like what I call a text dump. So I'm expecting you to apply what you learned on the first project on this project as well. So you can kind of see how that's happening here in this example. Um, and then here is the postcard. Now, the other thing that I had this student doing, and this was a different year, and lucky for you, you're not doing this as well, but I also gave the students a chance to design the postcard in another language. And this student chose to do it in Japanese. And if you would like to do that as well, I mean, you live in a global world, and chances of your um, postcard being just designed in English are slim to none these days. So, what would your postcard look like, and what changes about your design when you design it in a complete different language? As you can kind of see, this postcard has changed a lot. Uh, and he forgot to turn off his facing pages. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so we can see this. There you go. So you can see the difference in the design from the uh, Japanese version to the English version. I mean, it doesn't seem to be as nice and clear and legible. I mean, again, I can't read Japanese, so of course I can't read this, but it doesn't seem to have the same feel as the English version. So there may be modifications that are necessary to design work once it's redesigned in another language. So that's important to think about as you're working on campaigns like this. Okay, so I think I've covered everything here in InDesign. The setup is pretty simple and it didn't really take too long, but what I wanted to talk to you about a couple of those design things you should think about in terms of making decisions about typography, imagery. We talked a lot about imagery last week, so it's important that you go in and take a look at those videos and get all of the technical right on your images. Very important. So other than that, I wish you a lot of luck. I'm looking forward to the critique this week and seeing what a lot of you are going to post in terms of the progress on your campaign design. So I'll see you in the threads.